Prayers for the millions of people around the world.
Is in for me tomorrow. I'll see you after Thanksgiving.
Is underway tonight with the FBI working alongside multiple federal agencies.
When a suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm and discharged it at the National Guard members. The National Guard members, there were other members that were in the area. They were able to, after some back and forth, able to subdue the individual and bring him into custody.
So here's what we know at this hour. Both National Guard members remain in critical condition and they're being treated at a local hospital. The shooting happened at a metro station near the White House in downtown D.C. The suspect, who was also shot, is in custody and has been hospitalized. No motive has been released as of yet, but officials say this was a targeted attack on the Guards members. The FBI, Homeland Security, the Secret Service, ATF, and DEA are all working on this case with local law enforcement officials, and FBI Director Kash Patel is calling it a matter of national security.
We have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice.
Our team is tracking new details minute by minute. We begin tonight with team coverage from Washington. Kelly Myers at the White House with how the administration is responding to this. But first, we go to Hannah Brandt live on the scene right now. Hannah, what's the latest?
Well, Lindsay, what we've heard from police is they say a man came here to this area at 17th and I, just a couple of blocks away from the White House. You can see a very active scene over my shoulder here as they continue to investigate this tonight. And they say, here's how it unfolded. A man came around the corner and shot two National Guardsmen in what police are calling an ambush. They say this seems to have been a targeted attack. Now, they say when this happened, when this shooting broke out, there were other Guardsmen in the area, and they were able to, in their words, subdue this suspect. They were able to take him down, get that suspect into custody. That suspect, we've learned after a back and forth, was also shot, was also taken to the hospital. Those two National Guardsmen that the suspect shot are in critical condition at a local hospital tonight. What we don't know at this point from police is the motive. They say that's not something that they've uncovered yet, or rather, maybe they're just not willing to share at this point what they have learned from their preliminary investigation. And I asked during this press conference from law enforcement whether they've had the opportunity to question this suspect yet. They told me, look, at this point, this is just the preliminary stages of the investigation. They seem to suggest they haven't questioned that suspect yet, saying he too is in the hospital and is being treated for the injuries sustained during this back and forth shooting. But I want you to take a listen to what FBI Director Kash Patel said about how this all unfolded and how this suspect was taken into custody.
The reason that this suspect is in custody is because of the bravery of the men and women of the National Guard who responded due to their extensive training to secure American lives today. There was not any further injury and any further shootings. We are in the preliminary stages of this investigation. We will run down every single lead, every piece of evidence.
Patel says they will use the full force of the federal government and, of course, the local government as well to investigate this. He says this will be investigated as an assault on federal law enforcement officers. That's how the FBI is treating it at this moment. We've also learned that tonight Patel is at that local hospital where those Guardsmen are to visit them and their families as well, Lindsay.
Hannah Brandt, motive is going to be on the top of everyone's mind. Thank you so much. Our Kelly Meyer joins us live now from the White House with its reaction. Kelly, thank you.
So hey there, we are actually on the corner of 18th and I. So this is on the street where the shooting happened, just one more block up. That block was where I was closer to the White House on 17th and Pennsylvania when this all happened. We were at the White House. Our team got pushed into the press briefing room. I was just outside as cars were coming by to the scene, rushing over here. So seeing it all unfold as we were reporting at the White House today. Now, we are hearing that President Trump is ordering an additional 500 troops to be deployed to D.C. after this. We have the comment here from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, talking about that today. Take a listen.
this happened just steps away from the White House. It will not stand. And that's why President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army, to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve.
I want to take a look at what President Trump had to say about this today. He said, quote, "The animal that shot the two National Guardsmen, with both being critically wounded and now in two separate hospitals, is also severely wounded, but regardless, will pay a very steep price. God bless our great National Guard and all of our military and law enforcement. These are truly great people." He said, "I, as President of the United States, and everyone associated with the office of the presidency, am with you." We also heard from Vice President J.D. Vance speaking at the top of his remarks today, very shortly after we heard the news. Here's what he had to say.
It's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America.
We also heard from Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying that she and the Department of Homeland Security are working with local law enforcement to gather more information. Of course, we did hear from that press conference that Hannah mentioned as well. But again, the big news here is that President Trump is ordering an additional 500 troops to come into D.C. in the wake of this shooting.
Now, Kelly, have you heard anything about the president possibly speaking? I know it's Thanksgiving tomorrow, but he's been looped into this since the beginning and been communicating on Truth Social. Have you heard anything about when we should hear from him again?
It's a good question, and we know that he has been briefed. We heard from the White House press secretary that he was briefed earlier today on this. We know he was in Florida when this happened. Of course, he wasn't here at the White House when this all happened, but there was still a large security presence that we saw with Secret Service responding to this, along with D.C. police. We don't expect to hear from him again tonight. There was a lid called, meaning we aren't expecting to see the president again for today, but he could speak about it potentially tomorrow. We'll see. But again, he also commented on Truth Social. But I'm sure there'll be more to say from him and other members of his cabinet. Lindsay.
Kelly Meyer, thank you. Joining us now is former Secret Service Special Agent Charles Marino and former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Robert Chadwick. So I want to start with you guys. Charles, just take me behind the scenes of this entire investigation. What happens now? There are a lot of different entities involved, with the FBI leading this whole thing. What are the next steps?
Well, you naturally have a robust presence of federal law enforcement throughout the District of Columbia. This is clearly a targeted attack against these National Guard soldiers, and it's a significant problem tied to what I would say is an astronomical increase in threats against law enforcement, at which point the National Guard are also playing a critical role in D.C. and other cities around the country. So the FBI will likely take the lead in this investigation. You saw a lot of resources respond to the scene. The Joint Terrorism Task Force, I imagine, is also playing a role to pull all of these agencies together. But based on the proximity and the seriousness of the injuries and the fact that they were targeted, this is going to be a priority for the Department of Justice and the FBI to figure out what happened here. And I think ultimately what we'll find is that it is tied to the rhetoric that we've been hearing from political leaders that falls sometimes on irrational ears. And unfortunately, this individual decided to act out violently.
Now, Robert, what are the next steps in your mind as far as solving this and trying to figure out what this motive is? Like, how do we go from question to answer when surveying the scene?
You know, Lindsay, I think Mr. Moreno is spot on there. This is almost certainly going to be tied to the unprecedented level of rhetoric, anti-law enforcement rhetoric we've seen just continuing to be amplified, unfortunately, by some of our politicians and by the mainstream media. We just had recently Senator Slotkin made some really irresponsible remarks. CNN ran a story not too long ago about how, comparing this deployment of our National Guard troops that are helping secure these neighborhoods to 1930s Nazi Germany. It's absolutely outrageous to think about, especially on the heels of when, D.C. Mayor Bowers just talked about how effective this deployment was. She acknowledged that she was wrong. She acknowledged the efficacy of helping quell crime in D.C. because of this deployment. And to see these National Guard troops who've been brought in from West Virginia, trying to help their fellow citizens regain a sense of security in this city, in our capital city of the United States, to see them gunned down, which I also agree is because of the rhetoric against law enforcement, is absolutely heartbreaking.
Now, Charles, a federal judge ruled recently that the National Guard presence in D.C. was unlawful, and Pete Hegseth announced today that we should see 500 more additional troops coming to D.C. How do you balance those two things, with the federal judge saying one thing and Pete Hegseth responding to this incident in this way?
Yeah, we also have the courts contradicting themselves. You've got the federal appeals court that said the president of the United States does have the authority to federalize the National Guard. And then you had a lower court come out and say, yes, that may be true, but he doesn't have the authority to deploy them. Seems contradictory to me. As we know, some of these things are making their way all the way up to the Supreme Court. And overwhelmingly, the Trump administration has had the courts come out and rule in their favor on this issue. So I think we've got to let the process play out. And I think ultimately, in my opinion, the courts will come back and determine that if the president has the right to federalize, then he's got the right to deploy. Unfortunately here, the courts have served in many cases as an obstacle to what's been previously done by other administrations, including the Obama administration, when it comes to immigration and the deportation of those in the country illegally that are here committing additional crimes. So why the outrage now? Why the rhetoric now? I can't explain that, but these politicians certainly do. I think there needs to be bipartisan agreement that law enforcement's got a tough enough job as it is, and they don't need their rhetoric from the safety of their bubble amplifying all of these threats.
Now, Robert, is it normal to expect to see an FBI director come out and speak on an incident like this so abruptly?
I don't think so, especially given the current climate. It's right there in D.C. Of course, the FBI office is mere blocks away from where the shooting happened. And really, it gets to the heart of what's happening in the United States. What we've seen over the last several years is a drastic decrease in the response times. It's taking officers all over the country so much longer to respond to crimes in progress, which is exactly why the president has enacted this measure to try to give those law enforcement agencies a little bit of help. And we're seeing it work in D.C. So to see, Director Patel out there on the scene is not unusual at all. I'm sure, he was notified about it right away and wanted to be out there to lend, again, the reassurance to the citizens there that every resource available is going to be brought, to try to solve this, but also to reassure the people in D.C. that, we're not going anywhere. Secretary of War Hegseth said, this is simply going to strengthen our resolve. And at the end of the day, government is there to provide safety and stability for all citizens, regardless of where you stand, on the political aisle. We all want safety. We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? What are our representatives doing in trying to divide this when ultimately all of us want to go home at the end of the day to our loved ones? And so until we can get back to that position, I think this is what you're going to see is just further ramping up and deployment of resources to get this problem under control.
Now, Charles, final word. Is there any concern about the National Guard or the troops' safety moving forward?
Well, yeah, naturally, right? We don't know a lot of information about this suspect. If we've got a larger problem here where there's a coordinated effort by a larger group to target ICE and National Guard folks, so there's a lot of concerns out here. And then, of course, you introduce the possibility of copycats. So like I said, the threat's been astronomical. We've seen threats increased over 1,000% against law enforcement. And really, the rhetoric needs to be calmed down here. We have to remember that the men and women of federal law enforcement are enforcing the laws passed by Congress. If they don't like these laws, then they can take action and change them. But in the meantime, they need to be supporting the men and women that are putting their lives on the line each day.
Yeah, we have to leave it there. Thank you, Charles Marino and Rob Chadwick. Appreciate you both.
Thanks, Lindsey.
Coming up, more on the breaking news from Washington. A key member of Congress joins me live with his reaction. And how does the shooting impact security for tomorrow's big Thanksgiving Day parade in New York City? The police commissioner talking about it just moments ago. That's all coming up on the Hill. Stay with us.
To donate for 20.
Welcome back. Breaking news from Washington, D.C. 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard shot near the White House, both in critical condition tonight at local hospitals. Authorities say this is a targeted shooting and a suspect is now in custody. The White House asking for 500 additional National Guard troops in D.C. Joining us now from his district in Arizona, Democratic Congressman Greg Stanton. So, Congressman, I want to start right here with the president talking about asking for 500 additional troops in D.C. Is that the right move?
Well, first, just let me say how my family and I are praying for these National Guard officers who were shot today and are in critical condition. At one point, we even thought they may have been had passed away. We're praying hard that they live and that they can recover and get back on their feet. So everyone across this country is praying so hard for these National Guard members and their families. Look, I've been a critic of the president in terms of sending National Guard to the cities. So I don't think sending additional National Guard is the right move. But that has nothing to do with the fact that violence is never, ever the answer. And what happened today is a tragedy on all accounts and is completely unacceptable to use violence for any reason.
There's conversation about the rhetoric possibly coming from both sides of the aisle when it comes down to the National Guard being deployed in cities across America. What do you respond to that? Do you think that the rhetoric has something to do with incidences like this?
Geez, first off, they're investigating this case. Obviously, they have a suspect who has been apprehended. I don't want to get into motive or reasons why this person chose to use violence. Violence is never acceptable under any circumstances. And so I don't want to prejudge until we learn more about this and learn more from this investigation.
Now, there's a current situation that's kind of an oxymoron to everything that's happening because a federal judge ruled this week that the president exceeded his authority by even having the National Guard in D.C. and also gave the administration 21 days to appeal that. But at the same time, now we have Pete Hegseth saying that he will add 500 more National Guard members to D.C. Do you think that the administration should go ahead and appeal this to continue their plan and their planned goal of protection for people in the Washington, D.C. area?
I don't. And obviously, the legal situation in terms of the president's authority to take action and adding federal troops in Washington is different. It's legally different than other parts of the country. You saw in Portland where the president has tried to continue to add additional National Guard, even from California. The courts have consistently said that those actions are illegal and the president should follow the law. That has nothing to do with, though, violence against these 2 members today. Violence is never acceptable under any circumstances. So even though I believe that we should not have the National Guards in American streets like they are, particularly against the will of the mayors or the governors, violence is never acceptable. And so today is a tragedy, regardless of the circumstances why those National Guard were at the White House today.
Now, Congressman, do you think that should be an overwhelming or more of a concern for these National Guard men and women that are on the streets of America?
Yes, obviously they're doing an investigation. They're going to try to figure out whether this is an isolated incident or part of a larger action where more people involved. We just don't know. And so until we've learned that, I think it's too early to comment on that. Look, law enforcement, whether you are a local police officer or a National Guardsman in this position, working against crime on American streets, it's a dangerous position. And every law enforcement officer, we honor every single police officer, firefighter, emergency management official, people in the military, National Guard. We honor them and we honor their families because we know every day they go to work, they are putting their lives on the line to keep us safe. And so regardless whether we think they should be on the streets of American cities or not, I oppose that. Regardless, we honor them for their commitment to keep the community safe.
Congressman Greg Stanton, thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's still so much more ahead on the Hill. New York City making final preparations for tomorrow's big Thanksgiving Day parade. How today's shooting in D.C. could impact security there. That's next.
Today.
Welcome back. Our breaking news coverage continues. 2 National Guardsmen are in critical condition tonight after a gunman fired on them in D.C. This afternoon, the suspect is in custody after the investigation ramps up. Here was FBI Director Kash Patel a short while ago.
These National Guardsmen are heroes, and we must pray for their safety and their speedy recovery. And as the chief said, we are in the preliminary stages of this investigation. We will run down every single lead, every piece of evidence.
This shooting taking place on the eve of the country's biggest holidays, one of them. And as preparations are underway for the 99th annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, our Laura Ingle is live in the Big Apple as the city ramps up security ahead of tomorrow's big event now. Laura?
And good evening to you. Yes, we just had a press conference with city leaders here in New York City along the parade route where all the balloons have been inflated today. Hearing from New York City Mayor Eric Adams and the New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch talking about the security measures that are going to be in place. We're talking about more drones, more helicopters, more police officers on the streets. And as we take a look around here, I'll just walk you over here to Columbus Avenue. As you can see, you know, this is the kind of scene that we're seeing here today. More police officers, and we know that, and as in years past, when we talk about what we're seeing on the streets here, the NYPD deploying blocker cars along the city streets, miles of steel barricades, sanitation trucks filled with concrete and heavy weapon counterterrorism teams to protect the parade route. But while we heard a lot about increased security measures from last year, I asked New York City Police Commissioner if anything has changed in the last few hours after the shooting in Washington, D.C. Here's what she told us.
Unfortunately, what happened in the last few hours is one attack in a growing number of attacks against law enforcement across the country. So the type of thing that we saw in Washington, D.C., tragic, that type of planning has been built into our plans for deployment tomorrow already.
And one of the things that we have noticed today while we have been out on the streets watching the festivities, we've had a lot of people show up here to watch this annual tradition the day before Thanksgiving, watching these balloons be inflated that you see here behind me. We've seen some spotters, NYPD spotters, on top of some of these buildings on the Upper West Side here in Manhattan. And of course, as we ended the press conference today, city leader said, the rule still applies. If you see something, say something. It is so important for the public to be alert, but to still have fun. Tomorrow is going to be a huge day. Back to you.
Now, Laura, D.C. is so close to New York and similarly a neighbor in the big city, the same type of vibe. When you see what happened in D.C., does NYPD have to shift its strategy at all? I know they had planned to have a high level of security, as we heard Tisch, the police commissioner, say, but are there new steps that are taken into account, and knowing that there might be a new fear for the people that came and traveled all this way to see and experience this event?
Absolutely. And, you know, they were talking about just how big of an event this is. I mean, aside from the ball drop on New Year's Eve, this is basically the biggest event that New York City sees. So we have the increased security from last year just because they add extra layers each and every year. And when I talked to the police commissioner at that press conference about what may have happened in the last few hours, she described it, but she also talked about the things that you don't see. So the counterterrorism teams that are in place all throughout New York City certainly, of course, are aware of what happened in Washington, D.C. There's some information they can share with us, others they can't. But rest assured, we're going to see many more police officers on the street from last year, but also undercover officers that we won't see.
Laura Ingle, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here now, retired NYPD detective Patrick Bronson. Patrick, I want to start with your reaction to today's shooting.
Disgust, absolutely repulsive. It's a horror show. I mean, the fact is that things are getting completely out of hand. And President Trump, when he called these guys animals, he did a disservice to animals. This cowardly savage who shot two of our protectors, National Guardsmen, and critically wounded them on a street in daylight. It's actually unprecedented. This is unprecedented savagery, and my heart breaks and my heart bleeds on Thanksgiving Eve to think that they're fighting for their lives because this animal, as our great president elucidated, just decided to open fire on them. This country is going to a dark area, I will tell you right now, and I'm very, very concerned.
Pat, what we did see is a coordinated effort between the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, local police, and all these law enforcement entities work together to try to capture the criminal that is being accused of this action. So tell me what happens next in this investigation and what happens next as far as finding a motive here.
So a couple of things happen. First of all, we have extraordinary interagency cooperation. All the federal agencies, the local agencies, the various federal arms of those local agencies are all working and in lockstep together in terms of identifying who this guy is. And in the course of identifying who he is and looking into his history to the extent that we want to know the maiden name of his kindergarten teacher, all the way up until what he had for lunch today before he opened fire. This will be an extraordinary investigation, and it'll be lightning fast because everybody's working in harmony. We're synchronized in our efforts, and they will put together a mountain of data, a mountain of information, a mountain of intelligence that will ultimately point us and assist us in identifying what motivated this animal to open fire on these individuals, these uniformed National Guardsmen on Thanksgiving Eve. They are both the shield and the sword for us in our fight in America. It's absolutely disgusting. But the great thing is that we will learn everything, and we'll learn quickly. We'll learn if there's complicity, we'll learn if there's collusion, we'll learn if there's any elements of conspiracy, and it'll all be learned lightning fast. You want to know why? Because we got the best. We got the absolute best. Kash Patel and his team and the rest, and Pete Hegseth, and the chief that was on before, he looks like he's about 7 foot tall, that guy. These guys are the absolute best. I'll tell you what, it's a sad day and a terrifying day for the bad guys because technology has caught up with them, just like the Roadrunner and the Wile E. Coyote.
Now, Pat, I know you know that the president has suggested the idea of bringing the National Guard to New York. You know that he met with Mamdani recently, and they had conversations in which Mamdani detailed that he thinks the NYPD can handle most things in New York without needing the support of the National Guard. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Mamdani terrifies me. He's so horrific, he makes de Blasio look like Winston Churchill. This guy is a nightmare and clueless. He wants to send in social workers with clipboards when you got a psycho up in the Bronx lopping people's heads off with machetes. And this is just another manifestation of his twisted ideologies in play. Listen, the NYPD is the greatest in the world, New York's finest. I was a member for years as a robbery detective, so I am taking it a little personal. But the reality is that together, we will work with ICE, we will work with our federal partners, and we will not need the support of Mamdani. And by the way, he can't push that through without the city council with a vote of over 26. So it's not going to happen. I'm not concerned about it. And by the way,
to be clear, Pat, you're saying that you don't think that the NYPD needs the support of National Guard troops, or you do think that they need the support?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was referencing Mamdani's policies and his stated public agenda. No, I'd say, listen, the more the merrier. We need all the help we can get. I mean, you saw today the first thing that President Trump did was he ordered another 500 National Guardsmen into the streets of Washington, D.C. We can never be too safe. We can never be too secure. Send in as many as you can. Assist the NYPD as much as humanly possible. There's great strength in numbers, and there's a terrifying amount of bad guys out there, as we saw this afternoon at 2:15 in Washington. These are scary days.
Pat Brosnan, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Coming up, President Trump's response to the shooting of 2 National Guardsmen and the ramping up of troops in our nation's capital. Next.
Great sleep.
President Trump has asked me, and I will ask the Secretary of the Army to the National Guard, to add 500 additional troops, National Guardsmen, to Washington, D.C. This will only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we make Washington, D.C. safe and beautiful.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth there responding to the shooting of 2 National Guard troops just steps away from the White House, seemingly reporting the president is accelerating the deployment of troops in the aftermath of the shooting. Full panel with me tonight, Tia Mitchell, Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Brian Darling, former senior communications director for Senator Rand Paul, and Yemisi Egbiwale, I got it right, former chief of staff for the Biden White House press office. So I want to start because it's really serious what happened tonight, but the president just yesterday was touting how safe D.C. is, and there's been a lot of conflicting feelings about the National Guard being here. So I want to play this soundbite and then talk to you guys after that.
Washington, D.C. is considered a safe zone. This was one of our most unsafe places anywhere in the United States. It is now considered a totally safe city. I won't tell you about murders. We're having murders, like a lot of murders, on a weekly basis. We haven't had a murder in 6 months.
So, Brian, I'm just going to start with you because the National Guard, the point of them being here was to make D.C. safer. Is the feeling still resonating with the president and his team when something like this happens?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why President Trump was elected was he promised to make our city safe, and he has done so. I mean, anybody who's been to Baltimore or Chicago or lived in Washington, D.C., like myself, knows that the city is a lot safer than it was a year ago. I mean, this is a city that did have a lot of crime, and I think things are a lot better now. Now, what happened today is a tragedy, and the idea of having National Guard troops coming to these cities is probably a good idea because that's what the American people want.
Yemisi, how do you respond to this? I mean, there's a lot of friction about what the president can do specifically in D.C. and what he's tried to do elsewhere in other cities around the country that don't fall in the same category as D.C. How do you think this is in direct friction maybe with what's being thrown by federal courts saying this is unlawful with him ramping it up to 500 more troops in the area?
Well, I think the response of engaging with more troops is a bit surprising because I think for the most part, D.C., especially because of home rule, Muriel Bowser, our mayor, has operated differently than a lot of mayors in other cities because she had different parameters, right? And so the exit path of the National Guard with December 11th, I think, alleviated a lot of the tensions that residents may have felt with National Guard. And now the addition of 500, I think, worries some people if it might rile up a little bit more tension and if this isn't really the path to dissipating what we've seen happen now.
So, Tia, where do we go from here if we do bring more troops here? How does that de-escalate where we are now, since many people that we spoke to today have blamed this on the conversations and political friction in parties that are making incidents like this happen?
Yeah, as a journalist who I like to deal in truth and fact and research, quite frankly, some of the rhetoric around this shooting isn't based in that. It's based on emotion and feeling, which are valid because the death of these, or the injury, serious injury of law enforcement is tragic, period. But if we want to talk about policing and law enforcement and the effects of these National Guard engagements in cities, we've got to be able to do it in a nuanced way that's based on reality and fact. And some of the facts of the matter here in D.C. is that the National Guard, if it's patrolling in areas that aren't necessarily where the crimes mostly occur in D.C., then we have to be honest about that. We have to be honest about the fact that there have been murders in D.C. since the National Guard was deployed. We need to speak in truth. And we also are going to have to learn the facts about what happened today before we pass judgment on what did or did not happen and who is or is not to blame for that. And so I just think in general, it's tragic and that's true, but we got to be careful about how we talk about the bigger issues and make sure that nuance is there and the context is there.
And in recent weeks, I'll say, Brian, right after Charlie Kirk was killed, another political assassination that we saw rhetoric coming out of the Republican Party almost immediately about who was responsible. Sure. Do you think there's a little bit of a hesitancy and a pause here, and is that intentional?
Well, there should be a pause. There should be a hesitancy, but look at what happened after Luigi Mangione killed that individual who was a president of a healthcare insurance company. Many in the left celebrated that. And so I think today is a day where we should pray and pray for our police officers, pray for the National Guardsmen that are deployed here. They don't want to be here. They're forced to come here, and they're doing a great job for the American people. So I think that today is a day we should really, in our hearts, be worried about the families that have individuals that are deployed to Washington, D.C. and other cities.
So, Yemisi, you talked about Mayor Bowser. I want to play a soundbite from her and come back and you respond to that.
What we know, Andrea, is that this is a targeted shooting. One individual who appeared to target these guardsmen, that individual has been taken into custody.
So when we talk about motivation and how troops should feel protected after this, do you think there should be a concern about National Guard upping their presence here, about copycats, or about what the feeling might be after this?
I'm not so sure I want to lean into a lot of the fear and speculation. I think Mayor Muriel Bowser, during that press conference, did such a great job. Look, we know that she just announced that she is not running again for another term, and she has done a very admirable job of towing the line of being the mayor of the city and listening to the needs of the residents, and also being conscious of the fact that the president of the United States has a bigger impact in this city than others, and she's been incredibly diplomatic about it. And so I think that she played it very, very well at the press conference, because with these 500 troops coming in, I mean, we don't know how long they'll be extended until. It might be until she's done being mayor. So I think she's going to keep it off a little bit of this fear and speculation here.
Now, Tia, I want to play a soundbite from Kash Patel, who was immediately on the scene. We don't often see an FBI director respond to something like this right away. So let's listen to what he had to say, and then we'll talk about that right after.
These National Guardsmen are heroes, and we must pray for their safety and their speedy recovery. And as the chief said, we are in the preliminary stages of this investigation. We will run down every single lead, every piece of evidence.
So as a journalist, when you're looking at this, was it interesting to see Kash Patel, an FBI director, on the forefront of this so early when there's so many different agencies working to solve this?
I'm not as surprised because, again, the deployment of the National Guard in and of itself directly comes from the White House directive. The federal government, including Republicans in Congress, have been very invested, very active in the matters of law enforcement in Washington, D.C. as a city. So the fact that there is, therefore, a heightened interest at the federal level when these National Guardsmen, who at the end of the day were activated because of an action from the White House. So of course the White House is going to have an interest in this case. And again, it is tragic, and the fact that this happened near the White House, a high tourist area, a relatively low crime area, is going to also bring extra interest, extra attention, and the targeting of law enforcement. So that doesn't surprise me. Again, the thing is, we still don't know the facts, so it's hard to draw conclusions about what did or did not happen. We just really don't know.
And Brian, part of the conversation about why the National Guard is here in the first place is because the president said our nation's capital should seem as the safest place, if anywhere, in the country. And he was trying to push that initiative forward. On the eve of one of the biggest holidays in the country, to have this happen in our country with people from all over the world visiting, does this affect the overall goal that he was trying to get to by even having the National Guard here?
I don't think so. I think it's having that, National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. is a good idea. I think most people support the idea of making the cities safer. And so this shooting is tragic. It happened. There's always bad things that are going to happen. I mean, you're going to have evil people go out and do evil things. And what do we know? We know that National Guard troop was targeted. We know that this was very close to the White House. So we don't know if this was politically motivated. We don't know if this was an unbalanced individual. But I don't think this takes away from the fact at all that President Trump is trying to make our city safer.
Yeah, I think we're going to keep following this, and we're going to talk to you guys right after the break a little bit more to see what your final thoughts might be. Panel will be right back. Thank you, guys.
It's a somber reminder that soldiers, whether they're active duty, reserve, or National Guard, our soldiers are the sword and the shield of the United States of America.
Welcome back. We've been covering breaking news here at The Hill. 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard shot while on deployment in D.C., both in critical condition. The suspected shooter is in custody. Now, the panel's still here with me. Tia, you are the D.C. bureau chief. of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And so you're covering this. Do you think that it is a good time for the nation to try to put political differences to the side, looking at how this whole year has went? A lot of friction, a government shutdown that's just finishing, a lot of different feelings about the National Guard being here. Is this a time where you see moments like this leading to some type of working across the aisle?
I mean, I think there has to be both. We have to find a way to disagree with civility, because there will be disagreements, there will be political differences, but it should not result in bloodshed or loss of life. And that's what I think we have to keep in mind.
So, Brian, where do you stand on this issue? If there's friction with members, which it probably will be immediately, Democratic members pushing back about upping the presence of the National Guard, how do we solve this in a bipartisan way?
Oh, it'd be great to lower the temperature and to make sure that we have civil discussions. I totally agree. We need to lower the temperature of politics so that things like this aren't, permissible and acceptable.
So, Yemisi, how do you do that at the same time with disagreeing so vehemently about something like the National Guard? I mean, it's not just in D.C. People in states all over, leaders like we talked about, mayors and governors, disagreeing vehemently and very publicly with the president about his actions with the National Guard. How do you do that and also have an amicable conversation that shows the country we'd like to bring the temperature down?
Well, I don't think the president is going to act in good faith and come with any amicability when it comes to this conversation. I think he's going to lead forward a bit on Truth Social, and I'm hoping members of Congress don't engage as much with it. I think we speak about the guardsmen that are still in critical condition, and we talk about, just like Vice President J.D. Vance did, the acts of service that these folks do. I mean, a lot of them came here from all of these different states. They had no clear end date. They left their families. And
we got to go, but I know we do have to come to a conclusion here and get everybody on the same page. Thanks for watching The Hill. Our NewsNation coverage breaking continues with Hannah Doba, who's filling in for